Alright, right on folks, John Crane here in the shop with a video that I hope lifts you up today. Alright, today's video is about this hoist. This is a coffin hoist. I've had this hoist for many years and it has done a lot of heavy lifting. The coffin hoist, that is Fred R. Coffin, and he invented the chain hoist I think back in the Great Depression. I think the story goes he had a car jack and a chain, worked on this in his garage. Next, he was selling these chain hoists to farmers. Then it went out to industry, went out to the steel corporations, those kinds of people. Actually, I read that it was also used in Barnum and Bailey Circus. They used this to hoist up the tight wires that the tightrope walkers would walk on. So anyhow, it has a long history, and Fred R. Coffin, he's the guy that invented this, and then soon after, Duff Norton, they bought him out, and Duff Norton started manufacturing these. But this is a beauty here. Now, I believe this is a 1-ton hoist, and I have used this a lot. Unfortunately, this hoist has been sitting outside and it's gotten some weather. Now, it still seems to work fine, but today what I want to do is clean it up, take this apart. We can take a peek inside, see how this thing works. I think this will be a fun little project. Sometimes, aluminum body like this and some steel screws, that can be some corrosion going on. Let's see how this one goes. Oh yeah, no problem. Oh, there we go, look at that. Oh man, that's not tight, that's snapped off. Ooh, look at the rust in there. Ooh, see this stud is sticking out a little bit. Maybe we can get something on there and get that out. All right, if we take a close look at this, see if we pull on this chain, see we're moving. Good thing I'm taking video of this so I can put it back together, right? See if we can get these guys. Oh yeah, see these are no problem. All right, this chain that was looped around the top, this is a separate chain. This is just a big loop to pull on to operate the hoist. And then we got this chain that is going through a little sprocket inside. So when you turn on this, this is either cranking it up or it's releasing. All right, let's see here. If we pull this off, this will just spin off. All right, if we look close in here, we can see this thread. This looks to be a square thread. This looks like a square thread to me. It does not look like Acme thread. That looks square cut. And if we rotate this and we look closely on this sprocket, and you see this little dog here that digs into each tooth, that's what stops the deal. And then right here, it looks like a sintered bronze little washer bushing here. That worked right there. I see. And here we go. Oh, look at that. See, that just pulled right off of the outside. And then this whole deal. All right, you see that right there? That looks like a brake pad in there. That's probably an asbestos brake pad. Don't breathe deep. Yeah, there we go. No problem. Got this that little snap ring off. We can remove this little dog. That little dog, that cute little dog. This is loose. Aha, look at that. All right, see that? Now we got the worm gear right here going up against this. I see, very nice, very nice. See, I think if I take this chain off of here, then I can snake this chain all the way out, and that will enable me to tap this through. Comes apart All right. Oh, I see. Look at that. And then we can lube all this up too. Get that working real nice. I just love taking things apart. I don't know about you, but I've been taking things apart since I was a young kid, and I just love seeing how things work, what's going on inside. This thing is so cool. All right, looks like we can just sneak this right out. Yes, there we go. Very cool. Now, if we tap on this right here with our copper hammer from Orange, New Jersey, there's a couple roll pins right here and here, and I think that's holding this guy in. And looks like if I can tap these through, we can lift this right out. Look at that. That definitely needs a cleanup. All right, with that guy out, I think we can give this a tap. Yeah, just like that. And this will pop out this little chain sprocket. Yeah, look at this guy. This is what drives the chain, or the chain rides up and down on. What a great little piece. Look at that piece of machining. Very cool. All right, and here's this other little guide piece. Okay, this worm gear here, that is in this bearing. Now, I could attempt to pry on this, and which I might try with this lever here, but if it doesn't want to budge, I'm not gonna. Oh, look at that. It is coming right out. I was gonna say, if that was real tight, I was just gonna leave it in there, but that is coming out nicely, and that is great because I can clean this all up. All right, we have had a successful dissection here of our subject. Now it's time to clean up these tools, and then we're going to put this all into some evaporust. All right, I got all these parts ready to go into the evaporust. So here's our hoist chain. Look how awful this thing is looking. Into the evaporust. Here's our loop of chain. And then we got all our little steel parts. All right, I'm gonna let the evaporust do its work for about 24 hours. Let that do all the scrubbing before I take it to the wire wheel and clean up those parts. The good thing about this project is I need this hoist on Friday for a job I'm doing, so I know this thing isn't gonna be left all unassembled, so I gotta put this thing back together pronto. All right. While I got those steel parts soaking in the evaporust, I'm gonna go after these parts with a pressure washer and then hit them with the wire wheel and the sander. I tell you, any kind of wire wheeling nowadays, I gotta have the safety glasses on and the safety shield. You don't want one of these in your eye. Uh-oh. Here comes the supervisor for a quality control check. I don't know, supervisor, what do you think? Do I pass the test? All right, the supervisor's telling me I gotta clean up these dings and clean up this casting with the sander. All right, I got these little Scotch-Brite wheels. These come like 100 in a pack on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description to these guys. They burn out really quick, but they're great for getting inside these little holes. These little cut brushes are great too for getting into these little spots. Same thing, these come in a box. You get a whole bunch and you just go through them. These little wire wheels are great for getting inside of this lettering. I'm trying to get out all the little particles of paint that are inside these letters. And then I like to go over everything with these Scotch-Brite wheels for the angle grinder. Give everything a nice polish with this. Just getting this prepped before I put some primer and some paint on. And I'm just using some various things here to plug these holes before painting. This is some of this like tacky putty for mounting posters, that kind of deal. So just cutting off a little tiny amount of this and then just rolling it into a little point, kind of like that. And then just into a hole, just to keep paint from getting into those threads. You can also buy those little silicone, like rubber plugs and put them in all these holes. That's what they use at the powder coat shop. All right, it's time to pull these parts out. They've been in here almost 48 hours, I should say. All right, if you take a close look at your screen, you can see that Evaporust did not do a good job at all on this old rusted pitted chain. So I decided to shift gears and make a rusty parts tumbler out of an old cement mixer. Now, I made a video about this. I used some coal slag from Tractor Supply, some sandblasting media. I also used some media here from Harbor Freight for a tumbler. I dumped this all in a cement mixer, turned this on, and I cleaned up this chain beautifully. This worked out really well. You can check out that video. It's called Rusty Parts Cleaner from an old cement mixer. I ran this for about 3 hours and it cleaned up this chain beautifully. This is a nice addition to have in the shop. I did make an old mixer like this years ago. I put a 5-gallon bucket on my lathe to turn some parts with some abrasive in it, and it worked out great. And you can see here how beautiful that chain turned out for this hoist. That looks awesome. Remember what that looked like when I put it in there? All rusty, looking like a bunch of junk. All right, I did clean up a bunch more of these parts on the wire wheel, got everything nice and shiny, cleaned up some of these old casting marks, and I'm not going to bore you anymore with any wire wheeling. I'm bored of wire wheeling. Let's get to doing some painting. Let's put a coat of primer on all these, and then I'm going to hit this with some kind of silver metallic paint. All right, I got all these holes plugged nicely, either with some putty. Actually, those are some little drywall anchors that I found that fit in there, but everything's ready, covered up. You know, I was thinking about keeping this just the aluminum and putting a clear coat on there or an aluminum protector, but I'm opting to go for the paint. I think this might be a little bit easier maintenance over the long run. I know I said no more wire brushing, but this is a good tip. You can pick up a pack of these inside wire brushes at Harbor Freight for like $6. I think you get 6 or 7 of them. Good deal. All right, I got all these parts painted up. I peeled off all the tape, and look at these things. Isn't this looking just absolutely dynamite? I've got them all laid out here on the table, looking great. And I kind of have them laid out here in sequence of which parts go back on first. So I got them laid out and ready to roll. Even got a little ink pen here. I am going to highlight these letters with some black enamel paint on all these. I think that's the last thing I'm gonna do. All right, a few tools I'm gonna be using for assembly is some anti-seize to put on the threads of the bolts. I got a little white lithium grease that we'll put on the worm gear, and a little bit of whey oil on some of the steel parts just to give a little rub down so that they don't rust. All right, like this guy right here, I'm just gonna put a small drop of whey oil, just a tiny bit, and then I'm just gonna work this around with my fingers. This I want to be really careful with, just to put a tiny bit of oil on this. I don't want any of this oil leaking out of this and onto that brake pad. All right, this assembly is pretty cool. We've got this spline shaft, and on the other side, you know, we got the worm gear. And then we got this right here. This has the splines on the inside. Now this, we got to be very careful not to get any oil on this, because this is what the asbestos brake pad rides on. We do not want to get any oil on there. Here is this asbestos pad that we put on. Here's our little cog here, ring that locks into our little dog. We have another sintered bronze washer bushing, little spring clamp. So we're gonna drop that right down. Awesome. All right, from there we've got this part, right? That bronze washer rides up against this. This has this square thread inside here. Now this is where I'm going to put a little bit of white lithium grease. I got the acid brush. I put a little bit of CA glue on there so none of these bristles come out. Let's see if I did a good job at that. Now this, again, just want to be very light with this lithium grease on here. Don't want this running down into that asbestos brake. So again, I'm just putting a tiny bit on this, not much at all. All right, and then we drop this on. There we go. And that spins that direction. And then we got this deal. All right, let's take a quick look here at how this whole mechanism works. It's fascinating just figuring out how this whole hoist works, what Fred R. Coffing was thinking about when he designed this type of deal. So right now, if we turn this clockwise position, this is lifting our hoist. This is turning our worm gear on the other side. It's turning that little cog that is lifting our chain. So what's going on here, those square threads that are inside of this aluminum piece, that is ramping down and putting downward pressure on our asbestos brake pad in there, and that is turning our ratchet against that dog. So putting downward pressure, and this enables us to lift that chain. You know, the more weight that's on that chain, actually, the tighter that asbestos pad gets, this clamping mechanism, I should say, the tighter this gets against that asbestos brake pad, causing those to bind, and you can turn that ratchet. Now to release, you turn this way. Those square threads, a good thing about square threads is they do not bind. Now if it was a V thread, like a regular thread on a bolt, those bind very quickly. So if you put a lot of pressure on a V thread, that's going to bind up and get tight. The good thing about square threads is they do not bind up. See how quickly that releases? And no matter how much weight you put on this hoist, those threads are always going to back out very easily. You see those square threads often in a vise, you know, such as this record vise below. Some old vices, they have those square threads. So if we take this guy off, and I'll show you those square threads again. Here they are, right inside. They're big, chunky square threads. Here is our bronze bushing. Here's our ratchet. In between the ratchet and the plate below is our asbestos brake pad. So when we put downward pressure, we're putting pressure against that brake pad. It's locking this whole thing up, and we're able to turn this against our little dog. We're turning our worm gear on the other side, and that's a nice reduction, and it's lifting that chain. This can lift a lot of weight. Look how nicely this drops on here. All right, a lot of pressure, a lot of weight, easily backs off. And this little guy, this is an interesting deal. So if we put this here, that's kind of the setting I found this at when I took it apart, is when you turn this to the right, it's locking that brake together, and then it's backing off. I don't know if they want you to have some sort of adjustment. You could adjust this way back here, and then that allows that screw to lift off, but I think that's way too much. I'm going to keep this right at this setting. That's where I found it. But an amazing mechanism here, put together by Fred R. Coffing. Okay, before I put this inner chain guide in, I want to put this bearing, I want to drop this down into here. Okay, now I can slide in this rear chain guard. And here's our chain sprocket. This is a pretty nifty little piece there. All right, so what I want to do is, all right, just a drop of whey oil on here and on here. And just a quick rub with the fingers. All right, and then we're gonna drop this right in. And then we got this bearing. We're just gonna put a little drop on the outside of this. Okay, now for our worm gear. For the center of this, in here, I just want to put a little bit of whey oil. I'm going to take this brush and just work it around. And on the outside here, I'm going to coat this whole section with some white lithium grease. All right, now we'll drop our gear over the splines. And there we go. Meshed right in with our worm gear. All right, now I want to put this hook on. I'm going to use a little bit of this bearing grease, and I'm going to smear some inside of these guys. You remember what the inside of this hook looked like before? Holy macaroni. All right, so we can trap this chain right here. Put our hook right there, and we'll sandwich these two together. All right, I'll tighten my bolt down. I got a little bit of anti-seize on there. Look at that. That is great. What a nice setup that is. Drape this around. Get this right into the groove. And then we'll put our cover back on. All right, now time for our hook. Stick this in here. This gets a washer and a castle nut. quick test here in the shop. All right, we haven't seen this in a long time. The bell. I wanted to give it a little test run here because tomorrow I have to go out and do a job with this hoist, and the thing we're picking up is very valuable. So I want to make sure that this is taking the weight. It's picking up the old bell here. It's been a long time since I've had this bell out and about. All right, before I go in for the night, I think I'm going to put some black on these letters. I know this thing's already getting dirty, getting fingerprints on it, and it's going into use tomorrow. So the luster that this has is probably going to be short-lived, but I'm going to try to take really good care of it, not leave it out in the rain. Okay, let me take you out to the job site where you can see this hoist in action. And this job was at a beautiful park on Bainbridge Island, Washington. Now, this is a park that is taken care of by the Bainbridge Island Parks and Trails Foundation. So I was doing this job in collaboration with them. Now, this park has a public art piece, which is a Buddhist prayer wheel. Now, when you spin this wheel 9 times, the bowl rings at the bottom. Now, this mechanism was in need of repair, and I worked on some different iterations of repair in my shop, but they proved to be too costly. So we decided to turn this over to the Barn, which is a local maker shop on Bainbridge Island. It's called the Bainbridge Artesian Resource Network, and it is a great place for the community and for learning. And they decided to take this job under their wing. Some of the machinists there at the Barn were able to machine a piece and fix this Buddhist prayer wheel.
Yeah. 9 times.
Now, this group of machinists at the Barn did an amazing job on the repair. And for the day of install, I brought some scaffolding, and of course, I brought the newly restored Coffing Hoist. And you can see here we are raising this Buddhist prayer wheel. This is a very heavy bronze casting. We have to raise this up and over a center shaft so you could see why this Coffing Hoist had to be in good shape for this project. This is a very nice casting. So we slide this down over the shaft, over the mechanism, and get this in good working order. I had a really good time working with everyone who was involved with this project, the Bainbridge Island Parks and Trails Foundation, and the Barn. So if you are local, please consider supporting both of these organizations. The Barn is just an amazing place. If you want to get your hands on to some skills and learn some trades and be creative, you can go over there and join for a monthly fee. It is a beautiful place if you don't have a shop or you want to learn some new skills. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys all soon. Right on.